one of my great bits of life, I always tell people that most of my great advice in life, as in things I've taken on myself and impart to people, mostly come from cartoons and TV shows. There's one I really like, which comes from Futurama, which is when you've done something right, people don't know you've done anything at all. That's not what this is, but I love that. And that comes from Futurama. It's from a cartoon, but I think it is great advice. There's another one which is for relationships, as in romantic ones, or with friendships. And I bear this a lot, especially when people are soundboarding or talking, or you haven't seen someone for a while when they're going through a hard time and they want to offload it. And it was it's from. Do you remember Malcolm in the Middle?
I've heard of it, but I don't
Ryan?
remember watching. I don't
It,
remember.
it was probably 2 or 3 years before my time, but it was always on was always on before The Simpsons on Sky One on a Friday.
Yeah. You should definitely.
That's the bit. That's the bit I remember.
You should go back and watch it because it's brilliant. And what makes Bryan Cranston, so Breaking Bad, is one of the lead characters in it. It's like an ensemble cast, and he's like his first big TV role, and he's brilliant. And I think once you see other stuff he's done and you go back and look at it, you just realise how brilliant of an actor he is. But it's great. It's comedy, chaotic family. Reminds me a lot of my life growing up. I identified with it a lot, and so probably speaks to me in that way. But anyway, the husband in it, who is Bryan Cranston, I can't remember what the situation is, but he ends up, all of it's quite farcical in a way, but he ends up that he's getting his nails done in a nail salon. And I think him and Mrs. Malcolm in the Middle had a falling out in a big fight. And he's like, well, I don't, she tells me this is an issue. I tell her how she should fix it. And she's not happy with me. And the women's salon impart the wisdom from their side relationship and say, I said salon really weird, didn't I? The people in the salon impart their wisdom and say that she doesn't want the problem solved. She just wants you to listen and empathize and understand she's got a problem. And he's like, oh, and then there's a scene later on where she's talking about an issue and that's what he does. And she's like, oh, I love you for listening. Thank you. And that stuck with me. And I see that a lot where people soundboard. And again, relationship, friends, personal life, work life. Sometimes people are reaching out for a solution, and sometimes people just want to get something off the chest and validate that it's okay to be annoyed about that thing, get that validation, and then they move on and solve their problem. And I don't always get that balance right, but I see that quite a lot where sometimes people just want an ear. They don't want a solution. They're not ready for the solution yet. But that Malcolm in the Middle, that bit of great advice comes from. And I think that ties exactly with what you said there, number 5, I think, Jay.